Welcome to the Deep Dive. Now, if you're like most people, when you think electric mobility, you probably picture a shiny new EV, right? Fresh off the assembly line. But today, we're looking somewhere else. Past the dealerships, actually, into the garages. We're focused on something really exciting, maybe a bit unexpected, in green transport, transforming the cars we already have, the huge global fleet of gasoline vehicles. Yeah, our sources are taking us deep into the automotive retrofit electric vehicle powertrain market today. And our mission is pretty straightforward. We want to unpack why converting an old gas car is certainly, well, viable, why it makes sense economically, and why it might just be the quickest route to decarbonizing our roads. We really have to start with the numbers, the sheer scale, because this isn't just some hobbyist thing anymore. Not at all. The global market for these retrofit EV powertrains, it was valued at a hefty US $68.2 billion in 2024. And projections, they show it nearly doubling to US $134.0 billion by 2035. That's what, a 6.3% compound annual growth rate? Solid growth.
That 6.3% is definitely solid. It sets a strong baseline. But here's where it gets really interesting. Explosive, even. If you drill down specifically into the electric vehicle conversion kit market, so just the standard components, the systems, that part is expected to just skyrocket. We're talking from about $3.8 billion in 2024 up to $39.4 billion by 2035.
Wow, okay. That's a huge jump.
It's massive, and that difference in growth rates tells a story, a 23.69% CAGR for the kits themselves. I mean, that kind of growth signals a major shift. It tells you this is moving fast, away from expensive, custom, one-off shop conversions, and really towards standardized high-volume production. It suggests retrofitting is, well, it's moving briskly towards the mainstream, and it's being pushed by, policy, tech, and just plain economic need all coming together.
Okay, right. So let's unpack that core incentive. Why bother converting? Why not just bite the bullet and buy a new EV? What are you call them irresistible drivers, pushing big fleet operators and regular folks too, towards retrofitting their older cars?
Well, fundamentally, the main reason is often very practical and economic, especially if you're talking fleet operations or maybe consumers in developing markets. Buying a brand new EV, that's often just prohibitively expensive. It's a huge capital outlay upfront. So retrofitting the vehicle you already own or already operate, that can be a profoundly cheaper way in.
And the savings don't stop there, right? Once the conversion's done, the day-to-day running costs just drop.
Exactly. Yeah, and you get that initial investment back quicker than you might think. Our sources show estimates suggesting the conversion cost can be recovered in as little as 3 years, particularly for high-use commercial vehicles. And that's thanks to two big things. First, slashing fuel costs by getting rid of fossil fuels entirely. And second, much lower maintenance needs. Because let's face it, electric drivetrains are just mechanically simpler than combustion engines, far fewer moving parts.
Okay, that 3-year recovery sounds amazing. But let's be critical for a second. Are we talking about, say, a taxi running 10 hours a day? Or is that realistic for, someone's weekend car? Does that time frame hold up for the average person listening?
That's a really important distinction, yeah. The 3-year recovery, that's typically for commercial fleets.
Yeah.
High mileage, constant use, think delivery vans, taxis, buses. For an average consumer, the payback period is definitely longer, maybe closer to 5-7 years. It depends heavily on, local fuel prices versus electricity costs. But even for the consumer, there are other benefits. The vehicle itself lasts longer, and the value shifts a bit. It's not just pure cost saving. It becomes about preserving an asset long-term and staying compliant with regulations.
Which brings us neatly to the policy side. You see cities everywhere bringing in stricter rules like those low emission zones, the LEZs. So fleet owners, even private citizens, they face this choice. Do you scrap a perfectly good truck or taxi fleet, take a loss, or do you retrofit them, make them zero emission?
Right. And retrofitting then becomes the sustainable option. It extends the vehicle's life, which in itself reduces that huge environmental footprint that comes with manufacturing brand new cars and then scrapping the old ones. It's a circular economy approach almost.
And this ability to scale up, to go from niche to a real industrial solution, that's really enabled by those modular retrofit kits you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. These aren't just random boxes of parts. They are pre-engineered systems. You get the motor, the controller, the batteries, all designed to work together. It simplifies things dramatically, streamlines a whole installation.
Which cuts down on the technical headaches, obviously, but also the expensive time the vehicle's off the road.
Yeah.
You mentioned South Korea, for instance. They have developed specific modular kits for compact city cars.
That's right. And because they're standardized, the conversions can happen really quickly. We're talking days, not weeks, often with very few big structural changes needed.
That efficiency must be a huge driver for adoption. taking it out of the realm of just bespoke, one-off engineering jobs.
Definitely. And now, if we dig into the tech a bit more, the core challenge really is the swap itself. Taking out that bulky, complicated internal combustion engine, the ICE, and replacing it with an electric motor. Often, the choice falls on a brushless DC motor, a BLDC. That's pretty common for retrofits.
Okay, why BLDC specifically? What makes it good for this?
It's mostly about its physical characteristics. BLDCs are efficient, they're reliable, sure, but critically for retrofitting, they tend to have a compact size, a good power-to-weight ratio. This makes fitting them into engine bays that were never designed for electric components much, much easier. Bays that are often cramped, non-standard. So it directly tackles that vehicle compatibility hurdle, which honestly used to be the biggest bottleneck in conversions.
Makes sense.
But the swap isn't just the motor, of course. You need the brains, too. That means the motor controller, think of it like the interface for the accelerator pedal, regulating power. Then you need the battery pack, obviously, for storing the energy, and power electronics converters. These manage voltages, interface with charging systems, getting all these modern 21st century bits to play nicely with a, sometime, 20th century vehicle chassis. That's a significant engineering task, no doubt about it.
So it sounds like there's a whole range of conversion options then. It's not always ripping everything out and starting from scratch, which must tie back to that cost efficiency we talked about.
Precisely. You've got what you might call full conversion. That's where the entire powertrain goes, replaced by electric components. Result: a fully electric vehicle. But there's also partial conversion, or sometimes just called retrofitting. Here, you only upgrade certain parts, like the engine, maybe the battery system, but you might keep some original ICE elements. Most commonly, the transmission.
Wait, keep the transmission. Doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose? Part of the appeal of EVs is the simplicity. No gearbox. What are the trade-offs there?
It definitely adds complexity back in, you're right about that, but it significantly cuts down the cost and the time needed for the conversion. In fact, partial conversion held the biggest slice of the market revenue in 2023, about 42.5%, purely because it's more cost-effective upfront.
Okay.
By keeping the original transmission, converters avoid some really complex engineering needed to connect a new motor directly to the drive shafts or wheels. The compromise, though, you don't quite hit peak EV efficiency levels, and yeah, you still have some mechanical complexity that needs maintenance down the line. It's a pragmatic solution, a bridge. And it clearly shows that cost is still a primary driver right now in the market. People want in, even if it's not the perfect EV solution yet.
That pragmatic angle really explains how this is shifting, moving from, classic car enthusiasts tinkering in their garages to a serious commercial reality. And if we look at the market segments, while passenger cars are currently the biggest chunk globally just because there are so many of them on the road, the future growth seems clearly pointed towards commercial vehicles.
Oh, absolutely. The commercial vehicle segment, that's projected to see the highest growth rate going forward. Our sources point to a potential CAGR of around 25.6%, specifically by purpose.
Oh.
And it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Delivery companies, logistics firms, public transport operators, their vehicles are running constantly. High mileage, they stand to gain the absolute most from those lower fuel and maintenance costs we discussed. For them, a conversion isn't just an expense, it quickly becomes a strategic operational advantage, almost from day one.
Right. Speaking of momentum, let's maybe zoom out a bit. Look at the global hotspots. Where is this retrofitting movement really taking off, and what kind of policies are helping it along?
Well, right now, the Asia-Pacific region is definitely leading the charge. And it's driven by sort of a perfect storm of factors. You've got strong government support in many places. You've got absolutely massive existing vehicle populations, millions and millions of older cars and trucks. And sadly, you also have severe urban air pollution problems, which creates a real urgency.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. Look at China. They're using pretty tough emission laws combined with aggressive policies for scrapping older vehicles, which directly encourages retrofitting as an alternative. India is another great case study, especially with targeted programs like FAME. They're actively supporting the retrofitting of public transport buses, taxis. Think about major cities like Delhi converting their old diesel bus fleets. That has an immediate, very visible impact on air quality, plus it leverages existing public assets. It's smart policy.
Meanwhile, over in Europe and North America, they're catching up too. It seems like a mix of regulatory nudges and tech innovation there.
That's right. In Europe, for instance, the EU brought in new Green Deal incentives back in 2023, and some of those specifically target supporting ICE vehicle retrofits.
And you see it reflected culturally, too, like in Italy. EV registration shot up something like 63.3% early in 2025. And part of that growth is fueled by incentives that even cover retrofitting classic cars.
Hmm.
You can actually buy kits now, like for a classic Mini, for around $18,800 plus tax.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It connects sustainability with heritage preservation. That's a powerful motivator beyond just economics.
Absolutely.
And looking at the tech that could really unlock massive growth, we have to talk batteries. It was late 2024, QuantumScape managed to integrate their solid-state batteries into a classic car retrofit.
Solid state, okay. That's been talked about as the next big thing for ages.
Exactly. And it could be a game changer for retrofit specifically. Why? Because solid-state batteries promise better safety, potentially higher energy density, and crucially, they could simplify the complex cooling and battery management systems needed for current lithium-ion packs.
Less complexity means lower cost.
That's the hope. Dramatically reducing the complexity and cost of fitting high-performance, long-range batteries into older vehicle designs that makes retrofitting viable for a much wider range of cars.
Okay, so that's where it gets really interesting. The tech's moving fast, the economics look good, the policies are starting to align. So what are the hurdles? What's stopping everyone from converting their old cars tomorrow?
Right, there are definitely still roadblocks. They mostly fall into two camps, technical and economic. Technically, you're still wrestling with huge vehicle compatibility issues. I mean, an old chassis just wasn't designed to hold, say, half a ton of batteries low down. That affects weight distribution, which impacts handling, even safety compared to an EV designed from the ground up.
Hmm.
Then you've got aerodynamics. Older cars often weren't designed with that in mind, and battery range is still a factor, especially with space constraints in older vehicles. Plus, there's a real need for standardized safety and performance regulations across different regions.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a Wild West still.
That weight distribution point is key. I'm picturing trying to balance this massive battery pack. It's like those old hot rods where they put huge engines in, completely changing the car's balance. But now it's battery weight, often under the floor. How do converters actually manage that safely?
It often requires pretty sophisticated engineering, using CAD modeling to figure out the best placement, sometimes reinforcing the chassis structure itself, which naturally adds to the labor time and cost. They have to be incredibly careful about distributing the battery cells to keep the center of gravity low and maintain stability.
Right.
This is where standardization really helps. If kit designs become more common, and that 23% CAGR suggests they are, then the complex engineering gets done once and the cost is spread over thousands of kits. That helps solve the problem economically.
And the other side is economic challenges.
Yeah. The upfront cost is still significant, especially for the batteries themselves. They remain the single most expensive component. And you need specialized labor for these conversions. It's not a simple bolt-on job yet for many vehicles. Add to that the lack of fully standardized kits for every make and model and the uneven availability of charging infrastructure in different places. All that adds complexity, which ultimately drives up the cost for the end user.
But, as we've seen, the industry is pushing hard on solutions. Advanced tech is chipping away at these problems. We're seeing better motors, for example, like permanent magnet synchronous motors, PMSMs, showing up more in retrofits.
Yes, PMSM is becoming increasingly important. Unlike the simpler BLDC motors, which are great for many applications, PMSMs offer, well, superior torque density. They're generally more efficient, especially at higher speeds. So if you're retrofitting something larger, maybe a delivery van that needs sustained power on highways, PMSM often provides a more robust, efficient, long-term solution. It pushes the performance closer to what you'd expect from a factory EV.
And critically, this isn't just about the car itself anymore. There's a move towards integrating these converted vehicles into the broader energy ecosystem. Vehicle to grid, VDG comes up a lot.
V2G is potentially huge. It transforms the converted EV from just an energy consumer into potentially an energy provider, or at least storage.
How does that work in practice?
Well, with bidirectional charging, a converted EV parked at home or work could actually send power back to the electricity grid during peak demand times when energy is most expensive or scarce. This helps stabilize the grid, reduces the need for fossil fuel peaker plants. It's a massive environmental benefit and potentially an economic one for the vehicle owner, too, if they get paid for that grid service.
So it improves the overall financial case for conversion even further, especially for fleets sitting idle overnight.
Exactly. It makes the vehicle an active asset, not just a part liability.
And the last piece of that green puzzle is making sure the electricity going into the converted EV is clean in the first place. That's where things like microgrids come in.
Precisely. Microgrids allow charging stations, maybe at a depot or even a neighborhood level, to use locally generated renewable energy, think solar panels on the roof, maybe small wind turbines. And tech, like MPPT, that's maximum power point tracking, is used in the power electronics to squeeze every last drop of energy from those renewable sources, making the charging super efficient.
So it closes the loop. You convert an existing vehicle, power it with local renewables, and maybe even use it to help stabilize the grid. That's quite the vision.
It really is. And ultimately, what this whole retrofit market offers is a really powerful, arguably more democratized path towards sustainable transport.
It feels like a huge opportunity, especially globally.
I think so too. It's particularly beneficial if you think about developing economies or maybe lower income communities where buying brand new EVs just isn't realistic for most people anytime soon. Retrofitting lets you get high emission combustion engines off the road much faster using the vehicles people already own. You leverage existing assets instead of waiting years for fleet turnover or building massive new manufacturing plants.
Which leads to a really interesting final thought, maybe a provocative question for you listening, and certainly for policymakers.
Given these potential savings, economic and environmental, from retrofitting, should governments maybe shift their focus? Instead of primarily incentivizing buying new EVs, should they be heavily subsidizing the conversion of the existing fleet, especially the highest polluting commercial vehicles? It seems like a powerful way to accelerate sustainability, sort of bypassing the usual market cycles.
That is definitely something to think about. The idea that keeping your old truck or classic car on the road, but electrified, could actually be a key part of green policy. That's a real shift, moving from just replacement to maybe conservation and transformation. Well, we hope this deep dive has given you some clarity, maybe some new insights into this really fascinating and clearly fast-growing market. Thanks so much for joining us today. Please do follow the channel for more deep dives into the technologies and trends shaping our world. We'll catch you on the next one.